My name's Dr. Henry Irving, and I'm the Communications Secretary for the Social History Society. And it's my great pleasure today to be speaking with Professor Penny Summerfield, who is the Honorary Vice President of the Society and also Professor Emerita at the University of Manchester. Hello, Penny.
Hello, Henry.
And the reason that I've got you here today is because we're celebrating the wonderful news that you have been elected as a Fellow of the British Academy. So I wonder, as a sort of first question, how did you feel upon getting that news?
Well, I was elated. I felt encouraged. I was also quite astonished. Why was I astonished? Because part of me didn't really think that the kind of history that I've done over the course of my career was the kind of history that would be recognised by such an august and rather establishment body as the British Academy. So just to sort of give you a quick run through of the kind of thing I've done to explain why I felt like that. Back in the 70s, at the beginning of my career, I studied the history of 19th century music halls and imperialism, and then moved on my PhD to the radical consequences of army education in World War II, and that led me into interest in women in World War II, so very much in the 80s. I was studying women's history when it was really quite new and sort of not really the thing that people were doing. I was also interested in girls and women in education, and I was trying to find alternatives to the kind of approach that focused on policy and provision. I wanted to know how it felt to be on the receiving end, and I was really interested in sources like mass observation and also oral history. And that interest in oral history led me through the 80s and into the 90s to do several quite big oral history projects and to become very interested in the theory and the method of oral history. So, ideas about processes of intersubjectivity in interviews and the idea of composure, and also the interrelation between discourse, subjectivity, and personal narratives. And that kind of led in the 2000s into an interest actually in men and women in the Home Guard in World War II. Again, using oral history as a key source and thinking about the ways in which people's personal memories, personal narratives are shaped by wider cultural influences, and that in turn led into an interest in particular in film as a particular type of cultural configuration that shapes or contributes to the ways in which people have thought about things, how it influences a sort of broad public memory, cultural memory, and also personal memory. And I suppose that all sort of led me into the work I did for my most recent book, Histories of the South, which was on the ways in which historians have used all sorts of different types of personal narrative. So oral history, also things like diaries, letters, memoirs, and how the various types of analyses that cultural and social historians use, focusing on class, on gender, on race, age, sexuality, how they figure in the analyses that historians use when they draw on personal narratives in the making of history. And I became fascinated in how different historians handle issues of reliability, representativeness, and how they manage the sort of wonderfully complex messiness of the things that the vast majority of people who aren't rich and powerful say about their own lived experience.
I think it's wonderfully good of you to sort of to play down the role that you've played, because actually I think in your overview though of the career, I think it would be very clear to a lot of people what an important role you have played in shaping sort of our understanding of issues around subjectivity, for example. And I think from a society perspective, it's worth saying that you've played a really important role in shaping sort of social history more broadly during that time, and through your work with the society, which I know has been sort of entwined, hasn't it, from Lancaster onwards?
Well, that's very nice of you, Henry. That's lovely. I suppose I was part of a wider movement, the oral history movement, the women's history movement, the shifts within social history from really rather a quantitative, structuralist kind of approach back in the 70s, 80s, towards much more openness to the cultural turn, to gender, to race, to different, and indeed to subjectivity. I mean, way back, I remember being told off for using oral history because it's just a collection of anecdotes and it couldn't possibly, contribute in any serious way to historical understanding. So I was one of a number of people who were challenging that kind of view, I suppose, and doing what I really enjoyed doing as well. But coming back to the British Academy, I suppose my idea was that my own intellectual journey and career path haven't been particularly conventional. I didn't feel that the kind of contributions I'd been making really added up to the sort of thing that would be honoured by the British Academy. However, when I started to look into who else were fellows of the British Academy, I realised that actually I'm joining quite a number of very innovative social historians who include our very own Social History Society President, Pat Thane, and two of our VPs, that's to say Catherine Hall and Keith Wrightson, both FBAs, as well as quite a number of other really quite unconventional social historians like Peter Burke, who's now a grand old age. He taught me when I was an undergraduate at Sussex, but also younger people, Carolyn Steedman, Lynn Abrams, Joanna Burke, and also Khalid Fahmy, who won the SHS Book Prize this year. So I'm really in good company, and obviously I'm very, very glad and honoured to become an FBA.
So now that the news has had time to sink in, do you feel that it changes the way that you will approach sort of the next steps of your career? So how do you intend to use the position? Is it something that you think you can use to continue to promote social and cultural approaches?
Well, I've yet to learn what the position really involves, Henry. So far, it seems to be mainly an honorary one, a kind of lifetime achievement award, rather than having a specific role attached to it. But I've been asking, and other fellows say that they have quite opportunities to influence the way the organisation develops. So, one obvious thing is the election of new fellows, but also as we know, the British Academy has research funds, so there's participating in the distribution of research funds, and it has publications, so there's promotion of different types of publication and quite a range of activities that it sponsors, including conferences and workshops. And it also, the BA is consulted by government on issues of policy, like the shape of the REF, and things like the future of open access. So also, I suppose I gather that the BA is becoming more diversified, and that seems to me very important. Apparently it has been rather a senior white male establishment organisation, but it's obviously recruiting more women, more BME scholars, which is something I'd very much want to help on its way. And, always, I'd be happy to participate in giving grants to excellent applications from people doing unusual, interesting, innovative types of social and cultural history.
If I may, a slightly broader question, and this is, I suppose, building on that, the importance of social and cultural approaches. What do you see as being their sort of contribution to national life? I mean, one of the things about the British Academy is that it's designed to represent the very best of humanities and social studies in the UK. What role do you think social history can play in that?
Yes, as you say, and social and cultural history is a humanity, and like the other humanity subjects under the broad umbrella of the British Academy, It has the capacity to enlighten, to sharpen our critical thinking about our own society and other societies and ourselves within this global world. I mean, specifically, social and cultural history, it's popular. There are countless TV programs that draw on social history. There are popular histories. There's the practice of community and family history. I think it's important that academic social historians contribute to that popularity, as many of us do through advising, through being kind of public historians, and also even making TV programs like our former SHS chair, Pam Cox, has done. But if you're asking me, what do I think social and cultural history specifically offers, I think it offers a whole range of understandings that are very important in the modern world. I mean, just understanding more about how people have lived in the past, the values they've held, what they've thought, how different cultures have shaped people's views of themselves and each other, how they influence their capacity for like friendship and cooperation, as well as enmity and strife, how different cultures over time have created the parameters for feeling, for emotion. I think social and cultural history is also terribly important for getting at people's understandings of political, economic, social, ideological, religious systems that they found themselves in, and how people have developed a capacity for answering back, for exercising agency, for creating change. I also think social history taps into material factors, like the ways that people have made their living, the conditions they've lived in, their lived experience of production and consumption. And in addition, I think that it tells us so much about the interactions of memory and history, how selves are constituted through remembering the past, the ways that material objects can be part of that process, how personal and collective memory matters, how misremembering has consequences, sometimes personal, sometimes societal. And I suppose I'd kind of wind up by saying that perhaps at the moment, an aspect of social and cultural history that seems particularly important is the way it teaches us that our own confusions and anxieties in difficult times like the present aren't new. I mean, history doesn't repeat itself, but it certainly offers parallels with our dilemmas, albeit differently configured, always full of surprises. But I think social and cultural history tells us that we're really part of a global experience stretching back across the decades. And in that sense, it has an incredibly comforting, although at times disturbing message, which is that we're not alone.
What a fantastic way to end. Penny, congratulations again on an incredibly richly deserved election to FBA status. And thank you for spending the time with me this afternoon. It's been fascinating.
Thank you, Henry. It was lovely.